Morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. I saw your emails. I did not get to look at them, but I saw them.
Yeah.
And I think I'm quitting as secretary.
Okay. We're recording, so let's take this offline. Yeah, I will. We'll touch base.
Okay,
Touch base. I'll call you after the meeting.
okay.
All right. Thanks. All right.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
We've got more people joining, Colin.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
morning.
Morning.
I'm hoping not to be too distracted, but I'm at an appointment with Zurich. Are we at quorum? Are we ready to start? Hey, good morning.
We are at quorum, but I just want to make sure that we have everyone accounted for that's on policy and planning. I'm going to read out a list of names and so we can just all confirm, and that way I can confirm quorum because I have 11 members, 11 voting members on this policy and planning committee, and I just want to confirm. But we have 8 people present. We have Sharita McCullers, Heidi Carter, Colleen Herbert, Ebony Thomas Ross, Helen Tripp, Jason Brenner, Alicia Thompson, Drew Wooten, Angela Holmes, Abena Bidiaco, Rosa Pierce, and Samantha Smith. Am I missing anybody? Okay, so we have quorum at 8 then.
Did we have anybody say that they couldn't make the meeting?
Not that I'm aware
The
of.
Ebony one.
Okay, hold on. I don't think so. I'll just double check.
I
But
thought
we
it was-
are at quorum.
Sorry, guys. So, sorry. I will officially call our meeting into order. Thank you, Keisha, for verifying that our policy and planning meeting members are present. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the August and September meeting minutes. Did we get these minutes? Because I don't recall seeing them.
No, that was the request and the note was asking if we could bump these. We got behind
Uh-huh.
with folks out and the collaborative application. So we'd like to approve August, September, October at the November meeting, if that would be all right, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, does anybody have anything glaring or concerning about us delaying these minutes? I'm sorry, everybody's coming to talk to Zuri because her birthday's this week, so. While we're in the midst of waiting for the doctor. So, we will.
You muted, Sharita.
Our next, yes, I was talking. Our next item is, our unsheltered numbers update. Do you have that, Colin, or,
I
is
do.
Nicole ready?
I'll put them in the chat here. But it's 32 unsheltered families, 87 unsheltered singles. 29 families at risk and 28 singles at risk.
The at-risk number, is it, I don't have my normal things with me. Is that number stable from the last week's numbers, or?
Mm, it's about the same.
Okay, and I assume that we haven't moved any families out of the shelter to permanent housing to put any in.
Move-ins, I'd ask Nicole if she has an update on that. I don't have that level of detail.
Gotcha.
Wait. Nope, 19 males moved in last week, 1 female and 1 family. Sorry.
Gotcha.
A family moved in last week and we have a family moving forward today.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda, if nobody has any questions about our unsheltered numbers, is a lead group update. Anthony, are you ready?
I am, thank you. So not much to show today. The focus of the last lead work group was exploration of the tent policy and what that would look like. And so we wanted to have a robust discussion with the lived experience work group about what it looks like, what it means, and we did a pretty robust discussion that was very spirited at times. We took that insight from that group as well as follow-up documents that we received, worksheets and the like. And we crafted the first draft of a policy that was inclusive of everything we had to that date. So we have, we're still working on it, but we do have a pretty good first run of it. And Colin, I don't know if you want to say more about that, but we wanted to make sure that the lead work group was able to inform it and that we all had the same understandings about the direction that this would take us as a system and to get some of the insight and some of the history, because a lot of the folks on our lived experience work group have been around Durham for a long time, and they've all experienced the system. So the policy that we have drafted is informed by that conversation as well.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, seeing there are none. I don't know. Okay, somebody watching the chat, nobody, or hand or anything like that? All right, we're gonna move forward. So the next item on our agenda is our ad hoc alternative shelter committee update. And I have Drew and Ryan listed here. I don't know who's gonna speak, but you have the floor.
I don't see Ryan, and I was planning on speaking, but it's good to see everyone. Following our last meeting, we started this ad hoc working group. We've met twice since last month's meeting. We've been putting together just some draft concepts of a few ideas of alternative shelters for short-term solutions that could just immediately serve some folks who would not be suitable for congregate shelter settings. there seems to be some broad support among members of the ad hoc working group around ideas towards pallet shelters for both singles and families with children, safe sleeping for specifically single adults, and then supportive parking for both singles and for families with children. It seems like the parking project is the one that could move the most quickly. There were a couple folks who joined in on the second meeting, specifically from Families Moving Forward, Alliance, and UMD. So we welcome any other input. As a reminder, this is just supposed to be a working group to explore options, especially as potential funding opportunities come up for alternative shelter options, knowing that HSAC meets monthly, and sometimes funding opportunities move a little more quickly than that. So I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Thanks so much, Drew. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask?
I would also be happy to share any of the papers or and receive any input. Just feel free to email me. I'm happy to chat outside of this time as well.
Thank you so much, Drew. We have an additional item added to our agenda, and I think it's the pig count update. Is that correct, Colin? And
That is
Shantae?
correct.
And Shantae, are you ready?
I am ready.
You have the floor, ma'am.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
All right. So this year's pit count, we have drafted an outline and we'll be sharing with the city for approval. But just to give you all some idea of what we are hoping, we are hoping to actually shift the date to a Monday. So I'll be making that formal ask today. And the goal for that is because after having the ideation meetings, we also participated with the lead group and had an ideation meeting with them. One of the things that constantly came up was having more service-based count opportunities. And so with that, being able to have those that are already occurring, like the free store on Tuesday, the other meals throughout the week, moving the actual night of the count to a Monday is much more beneficial and conducive to having those service-based counts. So this year or next year, what we plan to do is again shift to a Monday as opposed to the usual Wednesday. We will continue to use the Counting Us app. We plan to go to encampments as usual, hospitals, including Big Duke, Duke Regional, and the Durham VA. This year, we want to include hangout locations. And one of the reasons for that is because last year, the weather was warm, and so many people weren't in their encampments. They may have been at hangout locations, and we want to include places like Sheetz or other gas stations or other community spots or shopping centers where people may congregate. And because we can't really determine the weather, we want to make sure that we go ahead and have those parsed out so that we can count there on that night as well. I just lost my page, sorry. We also want to do some morning after counts. And the purpose for that is if, we go out too early, people aren't in their spaces and their homes at that time, we can kind of catch them leaving in the morning and then include the service-based counts. And we also want to see if we can get connected to day labor locations to potentially count some of our neighbors who may go to day labor very early in the morning. For our community collaboration, we want to continue to expand our outreach to families and individuals sleeping in cars, the Latino population, senior populations, youth, and LGBTQ+ populations. This is not an exhaustive list of partners we're seeking to participate in our planning process, but we are looking for partners from Durham Public Schools, Families Moving Forward, Open Table, El Futuro, or El Centro, Durham Community for Senior Living, Life Skills, Harm Reduction Coalition, Carolina Outreach, Duke Regional, Duke University, and the VA hospitals to join the planning team so that we can coordinate different events and coordinate where people are sleeping that we may be missing. And then another ideation that came about from the previous meetings was to use subcommittees. So we plan to have some subcommittees to focus on those subpopulations and enhancing our service-based count. I think that is it for me. Does anyone have any questions about that? Yes, Anthony.
I just wanted to ask a question about one of the obvious things from last year, which was starting the count when we did as the library was closing. Remember, we talked about how you know, people were being asked to leave the library, which could have included some of the captive audience that we may have wanted to find out. Did we think through any of that, or is that still to come in terms of?
We discussed it in our internal planning meeting last week. And so that is an area, a touch point we do plan to engage with. Definitely consider how we can count those folks that are there and that may be leaving, because that was a really good point that we did probably miss some of those people.
I remember when the library was closed and they were envisioning and describing to the community what they hope to do in the new space. And one of those things was including like a DSS social worker embedded at the library. And I'm just curious if A, did it happen? B, are we the homeless continuum of some provider in communication with that person, and do they have like ideas of numbers of who those people are who use the library as a haven from the elements because they're homeless?
So there's not an office that I'm aware of, and in fact, just as COVID started and we were doing some planning for street outreach, the original plan at that point was H&H would have a street outreach office in the main library. But then when COVID happened, I will say one of the things we have run into, because when we looked at service-based counts and a couple of like the South Regional is a hub in many, not all the libraries are necessarily as intensely as downtown and of the ones that are currently open downtown and South. But, you know, we asked about even kind of wandering around and asking people if they were unsheltered, and the library system was not keen on that. So if we were to want to do something like that, or even capture people going out the door, we may need to look at what some other, and we can do this, we can look at some other library systems and how they're doing it in appropriate ways. Because there was a lot of anxiety from the leadership at the library, like not just downtown, but system, about doing that for a number of reasons.
I understand that. I was just curious on what the engagement looked like if there was a social worker there, because that would have been just some good information to have.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Shantae? Any comments? All right. So we are moving on our agenda. And the big thing on our agenda that I imagine may take some time is for us to discuss just some priorities for our homeless system. And I think in various occurrences in the last few months, we have found ourselves either in policy and planning or executive committee or the HSAC meeting as a whole, like talking about you know, what we need. There's been some conversations about strategic planning, and in doing my research and understanding strategic planning, I think that do I think is needed? Yes. But I know that a really good strategic plan and process is also time consuming and would not give us would not lead to a current plan of action for us. And we are clearly seeing a rise in the number of our unsheltered folks. And if they're not getting into the shelter or not being able to be connected with street outreach, these people are just kind of like sitting out there. And I know that recently we had some proposals about some things around a safe parking lot and things like that. And so oftentimes in those conversations, it's been, kind of mentioned that we can't do everything and we can't jump around like a bouncing ball. But I definitely think that we need to have some discussions as it relates to our goals, as it relates to what we do know is happening in our community. And then we need to set some things that are a priority as folks start to ask us what we need as a system. So with that being said, I'm gonna mute because the doctor just walked in, but the floor is open for us to like have this conversation.
So I can give a little bit of background here. Thank you, Sharita, and we'll definitely get into the conversation. As you all know, we're getting into city and county budget cycles, and we have been kind of jumping all over the place with everything's a priority, so nothing's a priority, which makes it really hard to move the needle on much at this point. We do need a strategic plan, absolutely. But as Sharita said, that does take time. So we're trying to figure out what are some low hanging fruit that we can agree on that sort of is, what are some priorities we can work towards implementing or try to do while we work towards that strategic plan. So we did put together a list of all the items that we've had that have been sort of thrown out over the last 6 to 12 months of things that we need or want in the homeless system. And the hope is that we can kind of narrow it down so we're not like constantly chasing everything that pops up, because we're unable to really ever get through getting anything implemented, because it's like the next idea, the next crisis. And as the lead agency who does a lot of the heavy lifting on all this, we're constantly getting spun around. And if we can come up with some priorities, we might be able to get it in this budget cycle to be able to see if county and city might be able to put some additional money into the system. So that's why we are kind of where we are. And we did create a survey that we can sort of have everybody just do an online survey in our meeting here, and then we can take that live data and sort of tease it out if that would be a good starting point. Because I think if we don't sort of create where are we as a baseline, it's going to be, we're going to spend the next hour just throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. So I would propose that we sort of do the survey. It doesn't take long. If you are an agent, if you're on here and you've got more than one person from the agency, just to try and keep things equitable, please have one person from the agency complete the survey versus everybody. Community development team, we're not completing the survey. So this is something for policy and planning and those on the call to do that. Keisha, there's two surveys, because one of the way the survey set up was we couldn't break out sort of emergency shelter. So there's a separate emergency shelter, unsheltered survey. But if Keisha, you want to run the surveys for us so we can get that data?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Did it pop up? Because I can't tell on my end. It look like it is, but I can't tell if it is.
It did.
Yes, yes.
It's
Okay.
And we're trying to rank these in priority. We're trying to put these in different buckets. So priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. It's
Gotcha.
not like, it's
And
not
also-
ranking these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's which bucket should these be in? And then once we get them kind of bucketed, this is priority 1, this is priority 2, this is priority 3, then we'll sort of figure out the data and what else is needed to figure this out.
So we were late because we were on perfect times, and she messed up all her clothes. So it was like, it wasn't like,
Russ, that's a good point. Would you list the item? Oh, is it additional rent subsidies? That's the topic? Okay.
That's come up several times, including from council, I guess, council members and commissioners at times, about, especially with all these units that are inside the affordable housing bond funded properties,
Mm-hmm.
that beyond kind of traditional or rapid rehousing and stuff, having some rent subsidies.
Okay.
We're using local dollars is what I'm trying to say.
Do we need more time? Is everyone ready?
If you're still working on the survey, can you let us know? I don't want it to be closed without you having to submit your responses.
This is Heidi. Am I seeing everything? I see one survey question, please rank the following, and then there's 2 things to rank.
There's more
that's-
than 2. You should be able to scroll down.
Oh, good grief. Okay, sorry. No wonder this made no sense to me. Okay.
Yeah,
thank-
there's like I
Thank
think
you.
there's 7 maybe.
It's Monday.
And also, should I do it and Samantha do it, both here from the county? I'm not sure, what you think about that. Are we the same
I think-
agency or not?
I think the two of you are looking at it with different lenses. I think it would be okay for both of you to do it.
All right. And then I'm so sorry. Could you explain again, priority 1, 2, 3,
So
those are different categories. You said not, say it again, Colin. I don't
Sure.
really, no,
Sure.
I'm not sure I understand.
no problem. So priority 1 is what are the items that need to be addressed first? Just what do we think are the
All
our goal
right.
is to try and get what are the top 2 to 4 things that should be priority 1.
All
And
right.
what are the next priority and what are the next priority? What we're trying to do is sort of give us a roadmap until we can get to a strategic plan. What are the things that on the surface level we have identified that we think are things we really should focus on while we build out a longer term plan?
Thank you.
And we're selecting one for each of the priorities.
You can put as many as you want in each priority. Obviously, if everything becomes priority 1, then nothing's a priority. So that our goal is to hopefully get, 1 to 4 items, 1 to 3 items in each of those buckets so that we can really kind of narrow down and focus our time and energies and maybe make something happen. Because without identifying the priority, we're just constantly running around chasing ideas and solutions and sort of on the proverbial hamster wheel.
My submit button is not activated.
Are you saying you can't submit, Ms. Herbert?
That's correct. I thought I was doing something wrong because I selected one for each of the priorities and following columns, that's selected multiples for each priority. And it still says I've answered 0 of 1 and my submit is not highlighted. I don't know if others are having that issue, but it's not allowing me.
Is anyone else having that same issue, or has anyone else been able to successfully submit?
I have literally 10 responses so far.
Okay, good, good.
This is Angela. I had to make mine smaller to hit submit.
We minimize the screen.
Yes.
Okay.
If there's anyone that has not been able, besides you, Ms. Herbert, to complete the survey and submit, we'd be happy to send it out after the meeting separately for you to weigh in. So let us know who you are if you haven't been able to get the survey submitted.
Russ, I saw your note in the chat about rent subsidies. That may be included under one of the bigger headings, like in terms of PSH or expanded rapid rehousing. So last year we had made a request for flexible housing dollars or flexible rental subsidies that could be used for a variety of purposes.
So it looks like we have 11 submissions. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. I can't see them as a whole, so I just have them by individual questions, but I can't see what everyone's response was. I don't know what it looks like on your end.
Overwhelmingly, it looks like diversion is everybody's priority one.
Looks like diversion. Then maximize increase emergency shelter beds. Day center services. And strategic plan would be your top. Looking at the color coding.
Agreed. Thank you, Colin.
It
Is
sort
that
of
how
seems,
others are reading this?
it sort of seems like, like I put strategic plan as third priority only because I was thinking we were trying to identify priorities that were outside of the strategic plan, that we all know we need a strategic plan. So what can we do before that last? And I put that as a low priority because I assumed we're doing the strategic plan. Okay, that's happening. And what can we do now, before the strategic plan's complete? So
And street
that
out,
may have, could have, could have skewed things. I don't know.
street outreach capacity has the same number as the strategic plan to that statement, Heidi.
Good
So,
point.
so do we want to do, so it looks like diversion, maximize increased shelter beds, day center, and street outreach. Okay.
What falls under street outreach? I'm just curious, what falls under there? Because that was the only option where I felt like a safe parking lot or anything like that would fall under. And so that is where my vote for street outreach came from.
We have
Like,
a
how do
second
we?
survey coming up that'll have more options
Gotcha,
for emergency shelter expansion. It's
gotcha.
coming.
So
Mhm.
street outreach is your typical street outreach piece. The expanding and increasing emergency shelter beds, we have a second survey that we're going to put up now, which will help us dive a little bit more, because we figured an increase in maximize emergency shelter beds would be a high priority. So we kind of broke out which of these would be a higher priority. So if we're good with these 4 items, diversion, maximizing, increasing emergency shelter beds, day center, and street outreach, because we know the strategic plan needs to be there, but we added strategic plan because it's been talked about. That's why it was on here. So Keisha, do you want to pull up the second survey? It's a whole lot easier. It's only, I think, four items to prioritize. And that one is looking at types of ways we could expand emergency shelter based on things that we've been hearing, which goes to tents and parking lots and non-congregate and pallet homes and everything else. So it sort of will help us drill down what we could do or expanding capacity in current shelters. And I will clarify, emergency shelter here is maximizing or increasing capacity in the current shelters. It's not necessarily building a brand new shelter, because building a brand new shelter is years in the making, not a what could be done today type thing. So these are just, which would be your first priority, second priority, third priority, fourth priority to meet the needs now. And we do know that we'll need to figure out some data with some of these points at some point.
I would also say that, the rankings of these items will be, I would think, very seriously informed by the work of this ad hoc subcommittee that's, looking into this and thinking about it more deeply. And a number of people here are working on that subcommittee, and I don't know, probably have deeper information to help make very informed decisions, more so than I do, for example. So just a sort of guarded comment in a way.
The hope on this is it'll help us focus on which intervention sounds the best so that we can start digging in and figuring out the needs and the gaps. And, you know, we've heard all of these. The question is, what's the data say? What's it going to work like to be figured out how to make it happen? And clearly you also want to get the biggest bang for your buck.
So, can I ask Colin, and this is my first meeting, so
Yeah.
just noting this may have been discussed before. So what the answers from these surveys will kind of help guide an additional analysis, digging into like HMIS and things like that? Okay.
Yeah, these surveys are really trying to help us focus as policy and planning, as an HSAC and as a lead agency. Where are we going to spend our limited time to figure out what is going to make the most sense moving forward to where do we want to start our efforts to say, okay, the survey results just popped up. So right now it looks like we've got a tie between safe parking and pallet homes. So, okay, then if that's sort of the priority, what we would do is look at safe parking, pallet homes, emergency shelter as, and then tents would be the last of the priorities in priority one. So we would start digging into, okay, what are our gaps? What does the data need? So if we want to look at safe parking, okay, how many people are currently living in cars? Trying to do some testing of people who are living in cars, how many of them would take advantage, doing some surveys of those with the lived experience that are currently in cars, how many of them would go to a safe parking lot? Because not everybody wants to go to a congregate space. Then, okay, then we have an idea of what the scale is. Is this 5 cars or is this 500 cars? Pallet homes. Okay, how does that work within a system? Because we have a congregate shelter, we have non-congregate shelter. A pallet home essentially is similar to the motel projects, which we created a 2-tier shelter system, and people were refusing to go to congregate shelter because they only wanted to go to a motel. So if we're going to do pallet homes, what group of people will the pallet homes be? You know, it helps us prioritize what are we looking for, what are we exploring, and where are we going to try and figure out the gaps and the analysis, and what would the cost be to set something up that would make a difference. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
And also trying to minimize unintended consequences of items that we have, because you know, every time you put something out, it might be the greatest solution ever. We thought motels would be a great solution, but then it led to a whole bunch of people who refused to come in out of cold weather because they couldn't have a hotel room, so they didn't want to go to an extra bunk or a mat on the floor. So we want to minimize negative unintended consequences. Looking at this, it looks like safe parking and pallet homes are tied. Does that look right to everybody else eyeball wise? And then emergency shelter, increasing current emergency shelter capacity would be second, and then tents would be third. That sound right to all y'all? Okay.
Sorry, Colin. I said yes, but I was muted too.
I saw you nodding your head. All right. Now, as we're looking at this, it would be helpful because we need to kind of move expeditiously to some degree because we're moving into budget season. And we want to bring some information back to this committee probably in November for what data do we need? What are the things that this committee would like to hear or know about before making some recommendations that would go to city or county on solutions for this? Keep in mind, we've got diversion is number one. So this survey is tied to the increase and maximize emergency shelter beds, which was our second priority in the first discussion. So I think that it looks like if we had to focus on two things, diversion and increasing emergency shelter beds is how we would pick two items based on this, because street outreach and day center are definitely needed. So as a group, what data would this group want to see or need to make some discussions or decisions? So that we can focus on pulling together some information and drill this down to figure out what it would take to close the gap.
I would be really interested in seeing if folks refuse the congregate shelter option, like what their reason is for refusing. I don't know if that's an easy thing to collect. But I would be interested in seeing that.
Can you expand on that a little bit more, Samantha? Like
Yeah.
refusing right now, or we had people refusing when there were motel rooms because they were clearly saying, I don't want to go to a congregate space. I only want a motel.
Yeah, well, I would be interested in, I know that this is something that comes up frequently in updates is, you know, we need diverse or a variety of options for folks who are coupled, for folks with pets, for folks who maybe are currently using substances that's not allowed. And I just think that having a to present, like, and would pallet homes be, or, you know, for example, would a pallet home be an option that someone with like a pet would choose, or would the, you know, a tent be the better option? Yeah.
I'll just say, in thinking through some of these too, I mean, I definitely hear about the data, and I think, you know, certainly coming back to the strategic plan, right? Like, this is long-term thinking, it's certainly needed. Like pallets versus safe parking. I think safe parking is, from a cost perspective, so much cheaper and so much easier to implement on a quick basis, on a quicker basis. And as someone who's been a part of that ad hoc working group, I mean, we could talk for hours about like who those things would be intended for. Less for folks who are like refusing congregate shelter, I would say. Like, I wouldn't use that language, versus like aren't a good fit. Like folks who like just socially, cognitively, emotionally like can't be in those congregate spaces. And so starting with like really small pilots, like potentially like needing to be referred by a provider, like obviously working in conjunction with Entry Point Durham, but like not using that language. And so I think it's like also like a cost benefit too, like from like a, what could we stand up immediately? What would be really cost effective? Those two projects seems like apples and oranges too. So I think it's like, obviously a strategic plan and having a huge picture would be super helpful. And also like, to your point earlier, Colin, like what's the low hanging fruit we can just grab? And it's both and. So I'll just throw that wrinkle in there. I know it's not entirely helpful.
Let's see. And I'll add a wrinkle on the data. So we're now in the 13th month of asking community development to provide information on the set-asides within the new affordable housing projects funded by the bond funds. Some of those projects are starting to come online. There's about at least 25 of those units about to come online here December, January. We still don't have that data, and that would really help us know what we need in terms of like subsidies and pieces, because I am all for it. I've been part of these conversations about some of these shelter alternates. But when we've been asking for this for 13 months now, in different venues through the city, we really do need that information because we may be in a position where we have families who could be housed very quickly and skip shelter, skip cars, skip the whole kit and caboodle if we just need some money for some subsidies. Because I continue to use the example that at least in the one project, there'll be 3-bedroom units that are $625 a month. I mean, heck, that's probably cheaper than some pallet options. But sorry to sound cranky, but we have been asking for 13 months. So I don't know at this point if we need to push past the director of community development up in this system to make that request, but we have asked several different ways.
I think that's a great point, Russ. I myself, I've been riding around to some of those properties and kind of trying to figure out who the property management entities are and going to their websites and trying to see what I can find just as a way to try to get around not having access to that information. And I've been successful with a few of them, and at least getting people on their interest list and things like that. But it sure would be easier if we could just get it.
So that seems like a really important data point that's being requested. And if we could maybe add to that from the county, more closely to the counties and anyway, the same thing, the affordable units that are being built by the county in partnership with affordable housing developers at 300 and 500 Main Street. I know we had talked in the past about whether there would be some set-asides for the folks in the continuum of care, but I don't know that we've ever gotten an answer on that either. So that would also be a good data point to add. And this would be for the future, I guess, but it's just, and maybe it would be more part of the strategic planning process, but to know how many of those same sorts of units might be part of the affordable housing that's being developed with ARPA funding that jointly by the city and the county. I don't know, I can't remember, $20 million or more, I don't know, but going towards that from ARPA funds.
To
jointly with
piggyback a little bit in a conversation that I know some of us were a part of last week, developing our relationship with DHA and seeing how we can move on some vouchers through the COC as well. I think to me that seems like relatively low-hanging fruit and a conversation that I would love to see happening. And that's personally why I scored more PSH and rapid rehousing slots lower, because I feel like if we can work with DHA to take pressure off of those existing PSH and rapid rehousing slots, that seems like a quicker solution than trying to find additional funding. So just another avenue perhaps to explore. And I just wanted to raise that.
And the other thing I want to add is I know like during Lloyd's tenure, we had this whole presentation and conversation about shared housing. And I think that the HSAC voted for us to approve initiatives around shared housing. But I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know, we like proactively put ourselves in a position, even with the new units that are coming up, that we know affordability is going to be an issue because of the lack of vouchers and the lack of access. If we try to figure out how to have those conversations to maybe get some approval on some maybe shared housing opportunities to make a new unit with a person without a voucher, make the options more affordable for the people to move into. So like, how can we capitalize on this, this area that I feel like we haven't really ventured into? We said we wanted to do it, but we really haven't invested in doing it and to create some more affordable housing options for people. It's quiet. Why is it quiet? Am I frozen? Can y'all hear me? Okay.
We can hear you.
I think we're all just raising pieces that highlight I'm gonna get a t-shirt that says this, we need a strat plan. they just highlight that we need, I mean, honest to goodness, there are so many resources that are being underutilized. And in many cases, it has to do with, I'm going to call it system functionality in some offices and departments, our ability to get, I mean, even some of the pieces with DHA, we've known about challenges there for an extended period. You know, we've worked to try and support them. A whole bunch of us got around the table last year in a conversation around HCVs. So we know these pieces. So again, I think the more we can dig into the information and have some plans, we can go back and say, just for example, if we could do something to help the functionality of the HCV office, they have new leadership, so don't mishear me, don't repeat me in an inappropriate way. They have new leadership, so they're working on a lot of pieces. But we know that's a critical constant thing, and the HCV office serves more people than the buildings that the housing authority has. We have got to have that high functioning. So in many cases, if we all just needed, like, the city and the county to put some extra money in to help the office be more functional, it would help everything. But we have to get to the place where we can kind of name that point. And I think this joint city county school board task force may be the group that does that in the end. But we do have several of these pieces where it's almost like, if we could just get ourselves organized and efficient and make some really critical system investments, a lot of this might work better.
All right, folks, do we feel we've exhausted this conversation at this point?
I'm just curious what's going to happen with the survey results and next steps between now and next month's meeting.
Well, that's sort of where we are, is pulling together what data needs to be put together and what would the committee like? Would the committee like us, lead agency, to come back with data and proposals to meet one or two of the, I don't know that we're going to have. So we've got, well, let me rewind a second. Too many things going to my head at once. We do have city RFPs, and one of those RFPs is city county joint funded RFP that'll be coming out in the January timeframe. So we're looking at a lot of money coming back out to the streets. So looking at these items may help us either reallocate funding or try and bring more money into things that we're bringing back to the table, or allowing more creative uses of the money that's there if we're not able to increase it. So RFPs and projects that have to be renewed in the next 6 months are coordinated entry with diversion, unsheltered coordinating agency, landlord engagement, white flag, and I'm forgetting one. Oh, housing opportunities for persons with AIDS is a fifth one that we'll be putting out as well to seek input on. So the HOPWA, housing opportunities for persons with living with HIV and AIDS, is a separate item, and those monies are not targeted for persons experiencing homelessness. You don't have to be experiencing homelessness to qualify for that program. You have to be 80% or below AMI and living with HIV and AIDS, or AIDS. So looking at the other four policies, where you got coordinated entry with diversion, unsheltered coordinating agency, white flag, and landlord engagement, funding from those could get mixed and matched, could be increased or decreased if we can find additional money. So I guess the question that I have is, would the group like us to come back with some recommendations based on this prioritization of, here's kind of what could be done in scale? I think if we're going to talk about safe parking lot and pallet homes, we would need to be looking at how many people are trying to get some data on how many people are living in cars that are looking for a safe parking lot, and trying to figure out what would that look like? And could that be wrapped into an RFP? Maybe, or would it need to be a separate standalone project? I don't know that you would necessarily put unsheltered coordinating agency, safe parking lot, and a day shelter together. Could you? Yes, but that's a massive, massive project that would probably take several partners to pull that size off. But it could be done. So would you all like us to bring back some recommendations with dollars and try and work with folks to get some data on why people aren't coming to shelter, how many people are looking for safe parking lots, and trying to come up with some rough order of magnitude budget items that we could come back and vote on so that we'd be able to bring back a proposal in budget season that would say, for instance, if we had $500,000 for X project, this number of people would be served, and this is the anticipated outcomes from that $500,000.
I think that would be helpful, Colin. And I think too, I mean, I don't want to speak for the group. Like, your department's the lead agency. You all have been doing an incredible job for an incredible number of years. Like, you all know what needs to happen, and like you've gotten some input from us. So coming back and saying this is what needs to happen, regardless of like whatever input we have, then you have our input. And also, like, if this is the time too, you said like this is the pot of money, and like you said, for the 6 to 12 months we've been saying, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? Saying this is what the budget currently is like. Is also, if this is the time to make an ask, having the prioritizations too of like, as that budget season's coming up, like, can we grow the pot of money? Like, thinking creatively about that too. Maybe this is the time, and maybe this committee can be a part of starting that conversation as well, and bring that to the HSAC, to just generally grow and expand homeless services in across the board, instead of just saying this is a standard renewal. So maybe using some of this input for that as well.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw my comment in the chat column, but I said like examples of similar initiatives that have been taken in our in around or in comparable places, like maybe Raleigh, Charlotte, Greensboro, kind of just bringing some examples. It would be great to like look at their budgets and kind of how they operationalized it, because I think that any of these initiatives that we look at, I think we need to also have not just a plan to offer that as a service point, but also as an option for people to have like a safe parking lot. But I think it also needs to be coupled with some intentionality on making that stay in a safe parking lot as brief as possible, getting that person to permanent housing once they get there. So because if we wanted to keep the project small, we could just start with maybe 10 cars, but there'd be some intentional effort to turn those 10 spaces over to serve more people in a different way, and to catch these people that we haven't been able to serve because they are outside the system.
Okay.
Any other input, people? Have we exhausted our conversation for the day? And community development, do you know where you need to go from the discussion today to bring back for next month's meeting?
I think we know what we need to do.
I think I also asked the question as to whether we were gonna share any of the poll information with HSAC or maybe survey HSAC just to kind of see if they're thinking this kind of the same things that we are. I don't know if that's too big of a scope, but I just worry when, I'm glad that as many people are in our meeting today to be able to give some insights, but I also worry about, are we missing some insights as well?
So I think given our short runway, I think starting with what we have is probably our best bet. I think we can share this with the HSAC next week, what came out of this. And I think we've got a pretty good sampling, and it sort of lines up with what we've been hearing from the lead group. Anthony, would you agree?
Yes, in fact, I was happy to see that 3 of the top priority 1 items from this group, are what LEAD set out as their priorities a year ago. So there's a lot of consistency around expanding emergency shelter bed capacity, starting a day center, and other things. So, and again, we will do this again with LEAD on Monday, per Sharita's suggestion. And the polls are done. They stay done, Colin. So if the desire for this group is to reissue the polls at, I think we can simplify them a little bit, for HSAC and reissue them.
They go to a training as I've done in pressure correction.
So.
I do think one thing that's of value, and I think it's maybe a bit of a culture change for us as HSAC, is we tend to have good conversations in committee, and then we go to the full HSAC, which is meant to be more strategic. And pre-COVID, I mean, back before I was in a county appointed seat and was a COC rep, like we didn't sit at the main table. Like we sat kind of in the back corner, and if we were called upon for something, we would respond. And I say that to say it's very hard at times for us to get stuff done in the full HSAC because it's just incoming from all directions, as though it's kind of open discussion. And I'm not trying to devalue everyone participating. I'm trying to help us think through how we get people to participate at the right level. And so whatever we can do to show that the committees are really where a lot of this digging in is going to happen, and that once it gets to HSAC, there's some refinement, but it's not the dig in process, might really help our effectiveness overall. So while I do want more voices involved, don't mishear that. I just us kind of starting to model more of the nitty gritty happening at this level, so that once we're together, the people that are appointed, the people that are in specific seats, like that really have voice and vote, are able to really have the conversation they need to have and move it forward would be great.
I agree with that, Russ. I think us being able to share out this information from this discussion today will, I think, also help encourage that to happen. Because folks will say, oh, I missed the opportunity to maybe share some insights that if I was going to the meeting might be displayed here in that, as part of that discussion. So I agree. Well, it sounds like we have gotten to the end of our meeting. Am I correct?
I think you are correct, Madam Chair.
All right. Well, it was indeed a pleasure to meet with you guys today and see you. Please excuse my distractions today. And yeah, we finished early. But we had some really critical conversations that I think were important and are important, and we will come back with this on our agenda for next month. You guys have a great week, and I look forward to seeing everybody at our HSAC meeting.
Rita,
Yes.
excuse me, prior to closing, just for those who may not have been noticing the chat, in answer to your question, I did put a couple of examples from Raleigh and Wake County regarding recent efforts around homelessness. So if you guys want to grab those links, if you want to kind of see what's going on in Wake over the last year.
I did see that. Thanks so much. I wish I could get it in a separate email, just so I can see it.
Sure, no problem.
Just because I'm not in my office, so if I was in my office, I'd bookmark it, but I can't do that.
No problem. I got you covered.
All right, guys. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I think that was Angela. Was that correct?
Correct.
And this is
All
Russ.
right.
I'll second.
All right, Russ. We have officially have adjourned our meeting. Take care, all.
Thanks all. Have a good one.
Bye.
I'm just trying to capture some stuff from the chat.
Thank you, because I'm doing the same thing.
I am too.
There's a lot of good information in here. Hold on, let me stop recording. Hold on. Used to be a button I can just hit. Hold on. You still copying, Jeff?
Yeah, I want to send this to one of you, so I want to make sure that the links work. I copied it directly from there, but I want to make sure that the links work prior to sending it to Sharita.
Okay.
I'm gonna shoot it to you real quick, Keisha, and let me know if this link works, if the links work okay. And if so, then I will at that point forward it
I
to
put them in the team chat.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you.
Hold on, where's the other one? Hold on a minute.
It works in Teams. It should work in the email too, since they're both Microsoft. I see one regarding the shelter.
Hold on, I'm trying to do the other one.
Okay. And that link does work. Okay, great.
Right. Okay, good.
Yep, I am. Thank you so much.
All right. Enjoy your day.
You did the same.
Mhm.